Welcome to Nonstop. It's the official and season show of Kirk, Herbstreit, and Joey Galloway. Your first stop for all things football, college and pro, every Monday.
Little bonus coverage here on a Tuesday night. Joseph Scott Galloway and myself on Nonstop. Usually we hop on Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern, but with the CFP rankings hot off the presses, Joey right there in Bristol, Connecticut with Reese and the guys where they release the rankings every Tuesday night. And tonight was the first release of those rankings. Joey, you guys had a nice show. Anything stand out other than you bothering Greg and Reese and getting underneath some skin tonight? Anything else stand out for you?
I was very surprised, honestly, at the top. And we had discussed this. In my own personal rankings, I had Ohio State number one. But I did believe that the committee, once you get into analytics, which you and I, when we're ranking our teams, we don't have analytics. We're just looking at these teams, and this is what we think.
Yeah.
But when the committee ranked Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, and Texas A&M 3, when Texas A&M is better in all the analytics, that was a bit of a surprise to me.
So you know what that told you? Maybe the old committee that you and Greg like to rip apart every week, maybe they actually watched some football and threw the analytics out. When they said Ohio State, holy cow, have you seen this Julian saying throw the football to these receivers? Throw the analytics out, man. We just think they're the best team. Maybe that's what they thought.
Does that make you nervous?
About what?
So if you get into a place where you throw the analytics out,
I feel like they've done that the whole time. I feel like
why do we have them? Let's get rid of them.
I think if you're splitting hairs, like they call it a cluster. If you get into a cluster of teams where you can't really decide between, boy, what should we do with Alabama or Ole Miss or BYU, and then you can go to the analytics. But if you feel confident as a group, and clearly they must have felt confident enough to collectively put Ohio State 1, despite not having, and I didn't look at the strength of record or strength of schedule or any of that stuff. But
yeah, A&M's better in both of those.
I figured it would be.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me nervous about that, Herbie, is if that's what we're doing, then there's no accountability to the process besides we just think they're better. And that takes us to a place where you might as well go to a voting system of who do we think's number one versus whoever else with no analytics involved. Let's not talk analytics if we're not going to use them.
Well, I think the only time, the way I've been schooled up on it by these guys, Rich and all these folks at the CFP, is the only time the analytics and conference champion, head to head, they have these different metrics that they use. The only time they really come into play is like they use the term cluster. When they have a group of teams, 2 or 3 or 4, when they can't separate them, they'll go to those metrics. But if they feel confidently and clearly, again, this is not unprecedented. They've done this a lot since 2014, when they just feel that this team's just, man, they're just a step above everybody else, regardless of their their analytics. I just think they must say right now, after 8 games, they think Ohio State's the best team in the country.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that Ohio State is just a step above Indiana and Texas A&M? Here's the thing that made me a little bit more concerned is when Mac Rhodes came on and he starts talking about the wins. He starts talking about Ohio State's wins against Texas and Washington. And then he starts talking about the wins by Indiana, which is Oregon and Iowa. Okay, so
both of those away from Bloomington.
Yes. So now
which to me should be, those are 2 tough environments. Those aren't
100%.
Hey, we beat those are salute those wins.
Yes. Now you're with me here. If you're going to mention those games, well, now all of a sudden Indiana got an argument here. And
Yeah.
so if that's what we're doing, I'm going to ask you the question.
Well, then that means that the committee thought that Ohio State, despite that, is for now, Indiana may beat
Yes,
them in a few weeks,
but that's
but
what I'm
for now,
asking
they
you.
think Ohio State's better. So that didn't even come into play.
Yeah, so that didn't matter. So don't mention it. You know what I mean? Like
Well, but no. As the
okay.
season goes on, you might be able to mention it more. I mean, what
Yeah, but
Indiana
we're
goes to,
talking about tonight. We're talking about right
tonight.
now.
I
If you're
think
going to
right now
mention
makes
those
it.
wins, then you
Yeah.
have to consider them. So I'm going to ask you, because I've watched, and I know you've watched, would you consider Ohio State to be a cut above Indiana, which is a team you had ranked number one last week, I believe?
Yeah. No, I would not.
So then that's the part of the equation to me. If there's a clear cut line there, then yes, analytics out the window. But if we're talking, you watch them, I watched them.
No, you got to tip your cap to them. They're
You're
a real
splitting it.
deal.
You're splitting hairs
I feel like you're
between
splitting hairs with Ohio State and
those
Indiana
teams.
right now. I think you're splitting
Yes,
hairs. So that's why
absolutely.
for you and I, we would go to the metrics, the analytics,
Yes,
strength of schedule, all the stuff, and we'd probably give Indiana the nod because going to Eugene, I don't know how good Oregon is. I mean, I think we've been trained to think
yes.
Oregon's good. They got, they've had a great history of some great teams, and we all
Mhm.
bow down to Austin Stadium, and you don't go there and win. And we're going to find out Saturday. By the way, they go to Iowa City, and they
Yes,
could lose. They could lose there very easily
100%.
if they don't find their offense, especially on the road. They could easily
Uh-huh.
lose at Iowa. By the way, Iowa. I don't know if they're ranked. I don't think they're ranked in the AP or the coaches poll. How about them? How about the committee popping Iowa up at 20? That was awesome. I love
It
that.
was it was very interesting. And Iowa's a team that is a good football team. Again, we're going to find out this weekend what Iowa is made of when they get a chance to
Yeah.
play Oregon. I agree with your assessment of Oregon. I've been saying
Yeah.
for a little while now, not quite sure just how good they are. The win at Penn State in the moment looked
Yeah,
pretty
we were
darn good.
excited. It's like Ohio State beating Texas, but even better because
But
they won it on the road.
but
And now
then
it's like,
eh,
not anymore, right?
yeah,
Um,
not quite.
and by the way, go real quick on Iowa. People might look at 6-2 and say, not really paying attention to Iowa. I brought this up
Huh?
on our Monday show. They lost at Iowa State in a rivalry game by 3,
Yep.
and then they had Indiana on the ropes. They lost by
Mhm.
5,
Yeah.
and very easily had a chance there late to be right in it and have a chance to maybe get out of there with a win. So that's their 2 losses. That's it. And
Yeah.
so we'll find out Saturday a lot about those 2 teams when it comes to the Big Ten. I think the SEC ended up with 8 teams,
Uh-huh.
and the Big Ten was 7, the Big 12 with 3, and the ACC with 5. Although the thing that stood out to me with the ACC, highest ranked team, 14, and that's
Yes.
Virginia. How about that? So this
Yeah.
argument about, is the Big 12 going to get 2? Is the ACC going to get 2? Now things could change in the next 4 weeks, but right now that ACC, after SMU knocked off Miami and Georgia Tech loses to NC State, don't they feel like they're just going to be a 1-team conference right now with these
I
first
think it
initial?
speaks to the respect that the committee has for the conference, which will then matter later on when you start handing out bids and how many you get. I agree with you when you look at it, and BYU plays Texas Tech this week, so that'll
Yeah.
change a little bit of what the Big 12 and where they sit.
But
And
you
there's a
still
lot of
got
football
Utah
left.
right there at 13.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. So it sort of says to you what the committee thinks of a conference as a whole, which you putting Iowa at 20 says you have a pretty good respect for the Big Ten and what the
Yep.
Big Ten is. With Michigan sitting at 21, you got USC sitting at 19. So they may view some of the Big Ten teams a little better than a lot of other people do.
The other thing about the ACC is there's more depth. Maybe that helps them when it comes to at large. Who knows? Who knows what the committee's thinking? The ACC had 5 teams. You go down to Pitt, who ended up being at 24. We mentioned Miami coming off that loss, Georgia Tech coming off a loss, Virginia, Louisville. All 5 of those teams are ranked in the initial rankings. 0 group of 5, unless I missed one. There wasn't a group of 5.
There was not.
There, right?
Memphis was the closest, and they did not get in the rankings.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have Oklahoma up at 12, and in the in the AP poll, they're 11. Oregon, I think, is in a really tough spot. Oregon is in 6 in the AP. And the only reason I bring up the AP, because at this point, the AP is irrelevant. We use the AP all the way up until now. If you ever watch a college football game, and this week, if you watch BYU and Texas Tech, you'll see a BYU 7, Texas Tech 8, because all we do from now on, when you see a number next to a team, it has everything to do with the CFP ranking. So BYU 7, Texas Tech 8, Oregon down at 9. And the reason I say they're at 6, I thought if they would have been in that 6 range in the CFP rankings, maybe they could lose and win out and still have a case. But man, I don't think they can win another game or lose another game. I really don't think. I don't think they can lose another football game coming up here. So they're sitting there at 9. If they lost another one, Oregon might slide in a big way and maybe not have a chance to recover. So that was a one that stuck out to me. Texas at 11. What were your thoughts on Texas? Texas 11.
I think Texas played their best game this weekend against Vandy. That was the Texas we expected to see earlier in the season. Was what we saw against Vandy. They looked really good. But again, Texas is in a situation where they go to Georgia in 2 weeks. That'll answer everything we need to know about Texas.
Oh, yeah.
The other interesting situation, if you want to call it, is the ACC with Pitt. It's simply because when you look at the games that Pitt has left, they play Notre Dame, they play at Georgia Tech, and they play Miami. Pitt is going to have a lot to say on the ACC and the way it plays out. If Pitt can somehow run the rest of that, it's going to be very interesting. They're going to become a very interesting football team.
I'm with you, bud. And I think when they lost 2 early in the year back to back, I think it was West Virginia and Louisville. I think a lot of people were like, Pitt's done. And since then, they've won 5 in a row. Haven't necessarily beat anybody great yet, but they're going to get their chance after a bye week this week. Like you said, they get Notre Dame, go to Georgia Tech, and Miami. And if they beat Notre Dame and they beat Georgia Tech and they beat Miami, they're going to shoot up the rankings, and it may not even matter if they got into the ACC championship. That could be the second team right there. Because Notre Dame at that point would be out, and then that would give you the opportunity for 2 in the ACC. So if Pitt beat Notre Dame, not only would they help their own cause, they would help their conference's cause in getting a second team into that playoff. So they're carrying a lot of weight when they host Notre Dame on the 15th. Anything else stand out for us? Or are we gonna?
I don't think so. I think in the first ranking, it just sort of sets a precedent of which direction we're headed. We sort of just get an idea of what the committee is made of. The last little thing that I thought very interesting when Mr. Rose was talking, he mentioned offensive line play. Interesting.
Why was he breaking the O-line down?
In that part again now, you're getting in the weeds. You're getting in the weeds when you start talking O-line play. So it'll just be interesting to see, but that just sets a precedent of the mindset of the committee as you move forward. That's what the first week is all about.
Now, he's the football guy, right? I mean, it's interesting. There, I think all these people have, different relationships with the sport. You have coaches in there, you have ADs, you have a media member, I believe. So everybody brings a different lens, I guess, into that room. which I have no problem with. I'm not part of the committee knows nothing about this. Why they don't know what they're doing. I'm not. I've never really been big on that. I think if you and I were in there and we had David Pollock and you and me and whoever in there breaking it down, people would think we're full of crap. Like we don't know what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So they are set up to fail. Like
For sure.
anybody else in that position, it doesn't even matter who's in that room. The masses are going to think they suck. I think they're put in a tough spot. And I mean, listen to us. We're sitting here going through this thing. Wow, what about Oregon at 9? They're doing the best they can, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
and they have their own reasons for why they put these teams here. There's not one team ranked in any spot. And again, it's only week 1 that makes me jump up and down on this table. What are they doing? I can't believe it. I don't see that.
That's just because
at all.
We've been at it long enough to know it's week 1.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Can you see
the questions?
Just the beginning.
I have to turn my phone sideways to see the questions.
I can't see them. No, I'm on my phone. I can't see them.
Okay, here we are. Here I got one. What are your thoughts on head-to-head with OU, Texas, and Notre Dame and Miami? What are your thoughts on that, Joey?
Miami having lost 2 of their last 3 games, I think that sort of eliminates any conversation you could have about the head-to-head. I think that erases that. The OU Texas head-to-head is a little bit closer together. I guess a little bit more recent. But I would still be surprised if it comes into play this soon. In the first rankings, I don't really look at head-to-head that much.
It's interesting. Head-to-head should matter, obviously, but it should only matter because I don't believe in if a team beats a team in week 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after that point, the 2 teams become very, very different. And the team that lost that game head-to-head all of a sudden becomes a team, man, you don't want to play that team. And we're expected to hold an anchor on around their ankles because you can't rank them ahead of that team. Remember they lost. I've never been one to do that. I think if it's close, then I'm okay with them getting the nod. But I don't think it's like put that etched in stone. They already lost to that team, so they have to be ranked behind them. I don't.
It would be impossible. That'd be impossible to do.
What do you think about Notre Dame? I'll give you my quick opinion. Notre Dame sitting there at 6-2. They're number 10 in the rankings. I said this after they lost to Texas A&M. If they win their next 10 games, they finish 10-2 and no conference championship, it'd be very hard for me to imagine Notre Dame not being in. And they've since then won 6 in a row. They've got Navy coming up this week. They go to Pitt. They've got Syracuse, and they finish on the road with Stanford. If they get through these next 2, Navy's always, the system creates a little bit of concern. And then on the road at Pitt, you get through those 2, Notre Dame finishes 10-2, and they'll probably end up, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that range. But they are an absolute lock if they win their next 4 games that they're in the playoff.
I would agree. And this is the second season in a row that at some point in time early in the season, it felt like Notre Dame might be done. Last year was the Northern Illinois loss. It was like, oh my gosh, they're done. There's no way they can recover. Then they go on a run. This season, same thing. Lose their first 2. Really close games at the end. And they started 0-2, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're out, they're done. But this Notre Dame team and what they've become, even though the game against Boston College is a little closer than people would like, but I agree with you that if Notre Dame wins out, they're absolutely in.
I saw someone ask if I'm calling the BYU Texas Tech game. Yes, Chris Fowler, myself, and Holly Rowe. We get a rare noon Eastern, 11 a.m. local kick this weekend. So we'll do game day, and then we'll stay and call that game. Really looking forward to that. How far would Ohio State drop if they lost to Michigan? First of all, assuming Michigan gets to 9-2, if they beat Ohio State, I would say they are a lock to be in at 10-2. I think that's fair to say. And I think
Yes.
Ohio State, if they lost that game, they would probably slide depending on, I guess, the score of the game, probably down to 4, 5, maybe. I don't think they'd drop very far. How
I
far do you
don't
think?
think. Yeah, I don't
Historically, a
think.
team that's number one all year and loses the last game, they don't fall very far.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. They don't fall very far. And again, when you talk mindset of this committee, the respect that they've shown Ohio State in this first ranking, while not being in the number one in any of the analytics, but put them at number one anyhow, I think that shows a lot of respect for what they see in Ohio State. So I can't imagine how they could not be in. But Herbie, something gets real interesting here now. When you have that conversation, and this is when the head-to-head stuff comes into play. Michigan, let's say Michigan does knock off Ohio State,
I think
but
they
let's
would go
all
to the conference championship game, wouldn't they?
but you also have another situation with USC, because if USC runs the table and they would have knocked off Oregon at the end. And so you look at their situation. USC also plays Iowa, I believe.
Yeah, they
Let's
do.
just say,
They play Iowa at home. They got Oregon
let's
on the
say that
road.
happens. USC beat Michigan earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Then here comes your head-to-head into play. And how do you handle it?
Yeah. I don't know, dude, but if Michigan, what are they ranked right now? 15?
Michigan was sitting at 21.
18? Oh, they're down to 21. So
Michigan's 21. USC is sitting at 19.
So if Michigan beats Northwestern and Maryland, and they go into the Ohio State game 9-2, they're going to move up probably another, depending on what happens in front of them, another probably 4 or 5 spots. So you're probably looking at 15, 16, 17 range, and you beat the number one team in the country in the last week of the season. Hard to imagine. Hard to imagine, even though you lost head-to-head USC. What has USC done besides, and to your point about they will have beaten, if again, these are all hypotheticals, but
Yeah.
they lost to Notre Dame, they lost to Illinois. Who have they beaten? They will have, according to this
Yeah,
hypothetical,
it's
beaten
their
Iowa
their
and
schedule
one at
finishes
Oregon.
their schedule finishes better with Iowa, Oregon at the end. Now, USC actually, as we look at this, USC would be in the Big Ten championship game, right? Not Michigan, because USC beat Michigan if they run the table. So they would play Iowa.
Indiana.
I mean, sorry, they would play Indiana. So yes, USC would now be the team in the Big Ten championship game if they went out.
Okay.
Not Michigan.
I have no idea, because it could be like a 5-way tie for that
There,
second spot.
yeah, but
I have
your
no idea.
problem is you couldn't at the end. It would be tough to put Michigan above USC. That's basically.
I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah, that's
pretty
interesting.
decisive. That was a pretty decisive win. And if these two teams keep winning, they're already so close. I think it would be tough to imagine Michigan going by. Although beating the number one ranked team, if they did that, that would give them a pretty big, significant boost. People
I'm gonna
asking,
say
is
no way.
Michigan, is there anybody that's overrated? Anybody on the board that's ranked too high? And anybody that's ranked too low?
I would say no, and I don't really. I like you. I believe this committee does a really, really good job.
Yeah.
And I think anytime there's a complaint, it's usually like splitting hairs. But I think they do a really good job. I think the only thing that I was surprised to not see Memphis get in somewhere, just because we usually have a group of 5 team in, but I don't have a problem with that at all.
The SEC ended up with 6 of the top 12. The Big Ten has the top 2, and the SEC has 6 of the top 12, at least for this week. Obviously, there's going to be wins and losses coming up, but we will continue to kind of monitor this. All right, Joe, you got to get some. What time's your flight?
5:30 a.m.
Wow. So you're in Bristol, Connecticut. You're going to Hartford. You're going to Hartford's airport. So that's my time there. I spent many a day Used to be a Residence Inn at that hotel there.
Yeah. Yeah. We stepped
Clarion
it up a
Inn,
little.
Clarion Inn. So
Yeah.
you're looking at about depending on traffic, you're going to be out so early. You probably have to push off at about 3:45 just to be safe.
Yeah. I'll get out of here about 3:30.
Oh, you're going a little earlier. Okay, I'd push
In
the
the
envelope
mornings.
personally.
In the
Yeah.
mornings. Airport's
So if you're
rough.
going out at 3:30, what time will you get up? 3:20?
3:20. Throw my skivvies on and run out the door.
Skivvies. You
Yeah.
don't wear hats, do you?
No.
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 I'd go 3:15, quick rinse, hat down, head to the in the old days we used to do national car rental. Did Don hook you up with you got a car or you got a car picking you up?
I'm a car guy. I like to rent a
like to
car.
drive?
I like to be in the car by myself. I don't want to talk to anybody.
Okay. By the way, someone asked where's Peter? He's asleep. This is Theo. Can you see Theo over here asleep in the chair? Can you see him?
Beautiful. Glad we got that in. All right, guys. Well, that was fun. Well, I hope the dog kicked the off button is why you disappeared. We'll catch you guys later. Signing out.